questions okay, got it. That's I try to get rid of got it.
I did that a little too quickly. I'm sorry.
Well, when Liz, I had initially suggested to Liz doing an open kind of session to see how many people might be interested in just a whole variety of things. And what came to mind is something that five of us were recently pretty heavily involved with, and that was the judging, quote unquote, of 19 pieces to select from that would be in this May 14th concert at Portland State. So I encountered, I mean, I've done this quite a few times, and a lot of the others have done it too. And Jeff is the one that organizes it beautifully. So we go to New Music Engine, and it's right there. It's easy for all of us. Usually, the composers submitting something submit they have to submit the PDF of the score, obviously, and most will have some kind of recording, either a live performance recording or a MIDI recording, and either one is acceptable to us, including no recording. No recording will take us longer to go through and get information about. But in the process, I came across certain problems in doing it that I thought about. I mentioned that to Paul, and we talked a little bit, went back and forth on a couple of things. So I'd like to throw out some questions that I sent to Liz. How do we really go about judging quality in a piece of music? Does a piece have to show originality? And if so, what in hell do we mean by that word, originality? I mean, most of us have seen everything that's out there. So, what does the word original mean? Something that we have never, ever heard before? I mean, I'm posing that as a question. I have no answers, but I'd like to get feedback on what people might think of that one word. And I've got other words that come to mind that I'd like to get out there as well. But does anybody have any comments, suggestions on that word? Is it too harsh a word to use? What do we mean by it?
Well, I think in the framework of a concert, it all depends on what the parameters of the concert are and who the audience is. So like it's not, in a way it's a competition, but it's not really, because there could be a piece that's, very well crafted and has originality, but somehow just is not fitting for that concert.
Well, I
I
feel like
mean,
that's kind of our big question, just to make sure that we're on the same page with what our kind of protocol is for each particular judging round for a concert. I mean, whether we're weighing kind of, I mean, we should get back to your question, David, but I kind of want to go maybe more in the bigger picture kind of thing, because I know it felt like a number of years ago we had more of like a matrix kind of, a real
Yeah.
rubric, not matrix, rubric of specific numbers, even more specific than what we have now, of sort of like a 0 to 10. How much do you rate this in terms of wanting it on the program or quality? It was even a little bit more sort of mathematical, trying to be objective. And now I feel like we still have a little bit of that, but I'm wondering how much, if we're all sort of on the same page, or if we go concert by concert. I'm kind of curious to get people's opinions more on that, as far as what pieces do we feel would work well in a well balanced or variety field or diverse type of concert. If we're going more in that direction rather than what we would consider maybe some more of these.
Would we maybe look at the word originality and say that that word means a pieces that are definitely 21st, 22nd century pieces that we define as living contemporary works that sound like they were written harmonically, rhythmically, melodically, whatever, in this period of time that we're living in. Can originality be used in that context? Or I could throw this out. Can we, in that context as well, can a work be considered too tonal and therefore be excluded from a Cascadia Composer concert, no matter how well we might think it was written?
I would hope not,
I
personally.
would hope not also.
I would also hope not. And I think that we have to consider that our audience is not entirely other composers, and that, we should have a mixture of accessible pieces in with the less accessible pieces.
Mhm.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
agree, just in terms of programming. I would think you would want to shape a program to have some variety on it, to push the edge a little bit, but also to give something easy, accessible,
Okay.
right, enjoyable right off the bat with no intellectual involvement.
Mhm.
All right. That's good. Anybody have
Definitely
any?
putting the audience as well in mind, in perspective here, in the equation.
Yeah, I can see that, and it makes for a very diverse type of concerts.
Which goes with one of our, one of our tenets, our mission statements for Cascadia, right? Sort of inclusivity and
Yes.
including all types of, and we are in a pluralistic, um, composing world right now. But I agree. It's hard to be, I guess also that's sort of like when you rate, if you try to rate a piece on its own accord, let's say, which is rather subjective. You can try to go through some criterions in your mind as far as craft, but if you can also go with sort of a overall gestalt kind of like this just feels like it should be in here even if it's not.
Original, is that the word?
Yeah, I don't know. There's lots of good questions here. I don't know if there are any easy
Yeah.
answers.
Um,
Ted,
you know,
do you have some thoughts on? I know there's a couple different questions going on right now, but
Yeah, I
they're
don't
all
want to
relating
talk too much because
we,
it's so valuable. Oh,
could you give us some back? I'm just curious because I've had this question looming since I was one. I think David and I both had these thoughts coming up over the past selection process, and I think Jeff had and you all had presented it with some parameters which helped guide that selection, for this particular concert well. So in looking back at it, I feel like I was a little lost at first, but when I kind of gathered more information about what we wanted to do with the concert, I felt a little clearer in my head and felt better about my decision making. But could you maybe refresh us, like, because we did have a little different process earlier on in Cascadia with the blind submissions as far as ratings and stuff. We kind of simplify
we,
it?
we did.
Yeah.
We did definitely. Part of that might have been when we got all our pieces on this new music engine. It made the rating system
Right.
lower, sort of squashed them down numerically, and so that's changed. I think that
It
has
made it
changed something.
simpler and streamlined, more
Yeah,
streamlined.
it is. It is more compressed. Um, my feeling is when I listen to a piece, I want to get a sense of two things: imagination and skill, no matter what the style aspect of a piece might be. Am I, with my biases as a composer, can I get a sense of imagination and skill, how a composer handles their material? Let's say they're writing a piano trio, the standard piano with violin and cello. How do they treat the three instruments? Is there a sense of skill in how they treat them? Is the piano just an accompaniment to the violin and cello? Or inversely, is the violin and cello doing anything to participate in what the piano might be saying to us? So that might, in my point of view, that might be a sense of skill. Um, I'll bring up, a composer that we all know, Johannes Brahms. And one of the things that he has always struck me, I was saying this to Jeff the other day because we both went to the concert of the Portland Columbia Symphony Orchestra, and their last work they programmed was the Brahms Second Symphony. And it was a very exciting performance. It wasn't a high quality performance because, among other things, he lacked enough strings to really help balance what that area was doing with the woodwind and the brass. But at any rate, I talked to Jeff and I mentioned, Brahms is a composer living when he did. That seems to me he has the best nouns, the best verbs, the best adjectives, the best adverbs, you name it. He worked so hard his entire life at skill, at the he was so proud of what he did, but he was also so incredibly um, what's the word, critical of what he did in terms of skill. So, I'll throw that out there. He's with Beethoven, I don't even think that way. The guy's imagination is so stunning for almost everything I've ever heard him do that the skill is like it's just there. And yet Beethoven from one piece to another, even if it's one sonata form, to another sonata form, they're not the same. They're different in so many ways. I don't. My opinion is that nobody has a greater imagination than what Beethoven did, including somebody like Brahms. But again, getting back to Brahms and the symphony that we heard yesterday, when it comes to judging a piece, I look for something that will have a sense of imagination, do something with their material, and have the skill. Well, if they do something with their material, they're showing me skill. So what they can do. So those are among the things I look at
Right.
with my bias when I am judging a piece or thinking about a piece.
So,
Anybody have other
well, I
thoughts?
was just going to say there's that whole kind of avenue of like how do we judge quality or whatever, or feeling like a piece is strong enough to consider including in a program, and then we have the issue of time constraints and shaping
Yeah.
the program itself. And I do feel like given how we have it right now, I'm sure there's room for improvement, but I do feel like we have something of that already in place with our semi systematic rating system, and we find the toply rated pieces by anonymously, and then kind of there's a little bit of a buffer zone about how to, if there are a few that are right, kind of tied or on the fence there, then we look at the timing and we look at variety and we look at variety of instrumentation and style and things that would fit into a particular program as sort of a final piece in this jigsaw puzzle of actually getting a program together. I mean, do we feel like that's a positive kind of approach to have the initial
Can I
making?
say something? I'm
Please, please.
new.
Please.
My name is Shelley Nan. I'm from Berkeley, California. I think that you've just addressed many different levels. So the last one is programmation. And I actually think that programmation is also an art. It's very difficult and very important to listen carefully so that you get a feeling, like you said, for the contours of the program and what will come first, what will go next, etc. And I'm really good at that. And also, it's kind of like the feng shui of music, And what I always look for is if I'm moved and I'm stimulated. Those are my first two important mechanisms for judging. And I'm not talking about something like judging the Junior Bach Festival or something like that, which I've done. I'm talking about on a different level, and the sophistication, of course, and the knowledge of what one is doing is very important. Now, I just want to say one tiny little bit more. At a recent Nakusa concert, SF, no names, there was a cellist who played a piece that was incredibly difficult, and I felt like it had no center, no grounding, no beginning, middle, and end. It was a collage of explicitly different phenomena that this cellist had to do. And when I went up to her, I happened to know her, and when I went up to her afterwards and I said, how did you feel about that piece? And she said, I hated it. Oh, and she plays with one of the symphonies in San Francisco. She's very educated. She said, I hated it. And I said, yeah, I can understand why. She said, no, it was so difficult and it didn't move me. There was no impulse in it. Anyway, then the composer came up, and after he congratulated the cellist, as he was walking away, I went up to him and I said, "Do you ever think about your musicians when you compose?" And he went, "No." So for me, that was a very important moment because I got it. He didn't care at all about his musicians. I, on the other hand, if I'm doing a piano trio or whatever, I want everybody to have a little solo part. I want everybody to be happy. You know, because they're taking something and internalizing it and then externalizing it that came from me. And I want them to feel as good as they possibly can about what they're doing. The end.
Shelley, what you mentioned to me is my impulse when I write. I do not write for the audience in my mind first. I write, most times I'll know the performers. I write for them first. And I say to myself, when I get to the first rehearsal, which I'm very nervous at, I want to see how well I have communicated something to the performers. And if after that first rehearsal, I will know whether I got through to them. So then I don't worry about the audience because they will sell it to the audience. So I always, first and foremost, write for the performers.
Yeah.
I know I've had, down through the years, I've had some pretty terrific performers. And when they play it, the way they play it, I just, at the premiere, I'm totally relaxed when I hear the piece because I know they're going to play the hell out of it and they're going to sell it to the audience. So, but first rehearsal, I'm really, really afraid and nervous because when I get those players together and we start rehearsing, whether it's a piece I might be conducting or not, I will know. They will tell me. I'll be able to read them if something is coming out of them from what I
Sounds
have
good.
written to them. So, and that's it. I have rarely been to a premiere where I could really say I'm sitting in the audience very nervous. Doesn't happen. Doesn't happen because I've been to the rehearsals. They are secure in the piece, and that's it. I just relax.
There's one other piece though that you've mentioned, and that's the audience. So when I wrote an opera a few years ago, I was very concerned because it was really intense. So one of my questions to myself was, do I have to take care of the audience? Now, if you think about the history of opera, it's always been dramatic and intense. Babies get thrown in the fire, you know, the whole 9 yards. But that happened a long time ago. So the way we view an opera from then is like, oh, it's kind of mythological, or mythical. But if we're doing something contemporary, then the question comes up, do I have to take care of my audience? And then the second question is, does there have to be redemption? And now maybe this is a little different than, you know, instrumental music because there is a story involved. But this is something that I have wrestled with. And at times it's not like taking care of the audience. It's more like being able to communicate something that has pleasure in it. You know, and then the other side of it is when I don't want to take care of the audience, it is the music that drives the libretto, not the libretto driving the music. And that's just the way it is. The music can be beautiful, even though horrible things are being said. So that's kind of like, it's a little like Bertolt Brecht and what's his name? You know, Three Penny Opera, Kurt Weill. It's that kind of thing, you know?
If I might interject, I was just going to say I agree with both of you on your thoughts, and it's maybe more to me from a composing point, although programming can factor in as well with some of the things you're talking about. I'm curious, just since we were just in the process, and I had the question on a few pieces, judging like how much weight maybe collectively we could sort of decide upon when we're curating, when we're doing the selection blind submissions for a concert that doesn't really have, let's say, as much of a clear theme. I mean, some of our Cascadia concerts are specifically
Right.
themed and will be picked and curated whether it's anonymous or not, with a real kind of coherent framework already. But let's just say it's a kind of a, a spring concert that's kind of open, and maybe there's a, a theme that arises after the fact, but it's kind of random pieces. I guess to me, it's like how much, when you're listening and judging a particular piece in that context, does one kind of judge it by its own, what you think of its own merit, or how much do you kind of view it in the bigger picture of all the pieces that are there,
It's
kind of
both.
contextual?
It's both. And I think it's impossible to quantify. What you're saying is, let's have, a series of ideas and
Well,
make sure
no,
we check them off. I don't think it works that way.
No, I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I don't think it
Yeah.
works that way unless there's a theme that people are interested in developing. But even that, you could get a whole different slew of compositions around whatever theme, truth, love, beauty, whatever. Lots of people will see it differently, so.
Yeah, I'm just like, again, not to name names, but I felt like ran across maybe a piece or two that I would have not necessarily been so drawn to or feeling so strong in of themselves, but actually thought, well, you know what, given maybe what ends up being in this concert with the other pieces, maybe that would be a nice balance. And maybe I would kind of.
You mean
I
an
guess
uninteresting piece with 4 really interesting ones?
Well, not that, I don't want to put it in that sense, but a balance of accessibility, let's say. I don't know.
Paula, you're thinking more like stylistic variety?
Yeah,
Over the
yeah,
course of a,
yeah. I'm sorry, I'm
yeah,
not
yeah.
clarifying.
I mean, in this century, unlike other centuries in the past, there's extraordinary stylistic diversity in all of us. We have what did Jeff say today? We have 89 members in Cascadia. How in hell did that happen?
93. 93.
Now it's 93. Are we going for 100, Jeff? I mean, is there a jackpot?
Sure, why not?
Good Lord. That's crazy, because even if we were doing 5 to 7 concerts a year now, we couldn't begin to fit in all those people. Of course, a lot of them do not. They sign up for it, sign up and pay the Cascadia dues, but they're not necessarily interested in sending us a piece for consideration.
So that's good. They're supporters.
They are supporters indeed. We need them all. Little large. We are a little large, but yeah. I think too, we have to think of an audience. We know contemporary music is not for the masses particularly. It's not pop music the way people think of pop music. It's not rap music. It's not, etc. So we know we're going to have a smaller audience, and our audiences, Jeff, have been what, generally between 100, 200 people?
I would,
That's
100 to 200 is a great audience. I mean, I think our largest audience ever was for our own concert by ourselves was probably around 250.
Really?
But
Okay.
we've had many concerts where there were only 50 people there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I've heard from friends back in Cleveland, where I came from, that they don't really get that many people for a concert either. And they have the money to put on quite a few concerts during the year. But no, if they get a small audience, we want to have an audience that had an average of 300, 400 members, not members, but, an audience that size. We'd have to be doing a different kind of style concert. So maybe something on the pop side. And we'd have to advertise the hell out of it. We'd have to maybe use some gimmicks for it. We don't want to do that.
Can I offer you an alternative?
Sure.
Can I offer you an alternative? Because Nakusa SF, we just had a concert that we live streamed. We charged people to watch it, even though it was free the next day up on the site, but we charged people to watch it at the moment. And it was live streamed, and we got hundreds of dollars and lots of people, because all of us, well, I don't know about everyone else, but I, for instance, have people all over the world. And when you do a live stream Zoom, that especially is going to be recorded later, a lot of people can see it. And a lot of people either donate, it wasn't very expensive, or they pay the money. And you know, for all that we say about Zoom, this, and I'm the treasurer of Nakusa SF, and this is part of, you know, what we're going to talk about actually tomorrow night in the board meeting, is that when we Zoomed this last concert, we made a lot of money and we reached a lot of people. When we have a concert in a small hall or in a church, usually a church or, you know, a Center for New Music, which is small in San Francisco, we're lucky if we get maybe 50 people. And this is like, you know, how do we figure out how to balance this? For one, I don't know what everyone else will think, but I don't want to give up the live streams. Maybe we can do both, you know, but, or maybe not at the same time, but have both, because we reach a lot of people. And after all, what do we want to do with our music? We want to communicate.
Yeah.
So it's just something for you guys.
Sheila, I'm curious, with the concert you just mentioned, can you give me an idea of the overall instrumentation? Was there a lot of variety?
It was
Was there
called,
voices?
yeah, it was called Composers and Friends Concert.
Yeah.
So we all brought our own different pieces to the concert. Some people paid their musicians to perform them. I happened to perform mine, and a singer, I paid the singer. So we had pretty much of a variety, and we did a, you know, a very, not generic, but a lovely title. Like, I can't even remember it anymore, but just this afternoon, I was in a concert with Max Lifshitz. I don't know if any of you know him, from New York. And he called his concert Lonesome Tears. So I don't really know. I'm not part of who decides what things are called, but I don't think that's really as important. What was important was that we all brought our energy and we brought our musicians, and we managed to figure out how to enter and exit smoothly, so it looked very professional. And oh, and it was shot with, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 cameras, not big ones, but it was definitely decent. And the next day, John Bellata, who I'm sure many of you know, who's now the president of Nakusa, he was able to splice and send each of us our own recording of it. So not only did we get that, but we had this, I think that we made, like, I don't know, I don't want to say it wrong, but maybe like $800 and hundreds of people watching. And I don't remember exactly, I'm sorry. Maybe it was, yeah, it was something like that. But it was very nice and very good. So that's something I would suggest you folks do also. If you're doing a live stream, you're alive. That means it's happening in real time. You can have an audience, probably now. We did it the last one, we couldn't have an audience, but you probably can, who's paying. And then you also live stream so people in, you know, different areas get to watch. So
Yeah, I think that's probably what we should do from this point on. Have both accessible as we go back to live performances.
right,
Have the streaming aspect also available.
you got it.
Can I ask a question?
I would second that.
Ed? Yeah.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah, can I ask a question? How many, do you have a count of how many people attended via live stream
For me?
for your concert?
Yeah, no, of course I do, but I have to look it up. So speak among yourselves while it's
Oh, I
gonna
don't mean to
take me a
preempt.
minute to find it.
Sheila, how did you advertise that particular concert?
It's Shelley,
Tell me.
and that's okay. We have, first of all, we all have our own people, right? So we had a lovely poster. John made a lovely poster with all of the information, and we all sent it out. You know, for New York, it was, you know, we did the timing so people would know when they could watch. I did with my group, and oh, and there's a person here who runs a very nice advertising platform, and for very little money, she feels fine about placing ads and information about concerts that are coming up, or if they need musicians for something or like that. And the acronym is BACH. It's like Bay Area Concert, whatever, I can't remember, but the acronym is Bach, you can find it. And we also put things in the San Francisco Examiner. You know, John is in charge of all of that, but we just did the best we could do. Oh, and then, you know, Facebook and all of that. And it ended up being very successful. Okay, I'm going to look and see if I can find the exact numbers. I'm sure I can. Okay.
Has anybody else, while she's looking that up, been on the selection committees and have other thoughts or concerns or things that they feel like, you know, could be, I feel like, you know, we're doing, I think in general, a pretty good job of trying to make a fair selection process happen here with these anonymous submissions, but I'm curious if anybody else who's been on Cascadia, you know, I've been on them periodically over the years. But
I've
if
been on
anybody else
them
has any
quite a
other
while
thoughts about how
back.
to improve.
Elizabeth, what?
I was on some of the selection committees quite a while back, and I had concerns sometimes about performability. Some of the pieces that I saw, I wondered if they actually could be played. And I mean, there were MIDIs that were submitted. Obviously, if there was a live recording submitted, it could be played. But there from time to time there'd be a piece that I thought, really, could that actually be played? And I mean, that's a concern, and I'm not sure how to address it, especially if it's for an instrument that I'm not very familiar with.
Well, that's a
How,
tough question to answer because I think this area has a lot of really excellent performers. Now, the MIDI is what it is. We all know it's accurate, pitch, rhythm, whatever, etc. But it can also maybe give us somewhat of a distorted view to somebody, particularly the tempos that some of the MIDIs are done in are maybe sometimes unrealistic.
Mm.
But still, we have to look at the MIDI, and I wouldn't think of it that way unless, you know, somebody sends in a piece that is basically looking incredibly complex and difficult, and
and not an idiomatic, but that's another.
just an unrealistic piece, and performers maybe, this is my
Yeah.
bias, maybe are not going to like approaching it because of the amount of time they would have to spend on it. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I
We
think somebody
we have
a piece that looks like Elliott Carter, that's a bridge too far for me, maybe. But
we have had a couple instances where a committee voted in a piece, and then when we took it to the performer, I'm thinking of one piece in particular. Again, I'm not going to name names, but they said, well, if I had a year, I could do it.
Mm.
And at that point, it's like we've kind of filed it away that maybe in the future we might be able to do it at some point. But I think everybody, including the composer, has kind of given up on it at this point.
Well, there's
Unfortunately.
a very easy way to deal with that. After you choose your pieces, let's say you choose 4 pieces, you send them to the group and you say, or 5, however many you do, you say, we'd like your feedback. Which ones do you want to perform? I mean, the musicians themselves have to have a say in it, I think. I mean, I think it's good.
Well, that's interesting. We haven't typically done that so much, but we do. There are, like, for example, if we're working with a choir, obviously the director has veto power, and but we haven't done that as much as
Did a
perhaps
little bit
we should have.
with Delgani a little bit when we had more time. When there
Yes.
is more time frame, you know, we got a tight time frame with some of these things, so
I can't find it. I can tell you tomorrow.
makes it more challenging.
Read it.
Well,
So,
writing idiomatic music, that is also skill, and it's not skill just to write something that's difficult with a computer. That's not
right.
skill.
Right.
That's
Right.
right.
Yes.
That's right. Because avant-garde is not avant-garde anymore. It's the end of the 70s, and it refers specifically to the last moment of that music. It's not about now, avant-garde. Contemporary music is about now, but not the avant-garde. That became a moniker for something that is, as far as I'm concerned, it's also passé.
Mhm.
because, you know, Schubert said the most difficult thing to do was write a melody.
Mhm.
Oh,
Now, you know, there's skill, like David was saying, a skill is really important in any piece that you're going to take a look at, whether it is Baroque or whether it is classical or whether it is contemporary. And if it's stimulating and it moves you, then that's a piece that you might want to send on to your group, more than one piece, and say, we like these. How do you feel about it? You know?
yeah, Shelley, we've rarely done that.
Oh,
We have done it with, like Paul mentioned, the Delgani String Quartet.
oh, right.
Have we ever done that with a woodwind group? I don't think so. And
And
of
what
course,
happened with the Delgani?
yeah, as Jeff mentioned, we with a choral group, it's going to be the director that does indeed decide. So he will go over them.
Yeah, well, that's different. I mean,
Yeah,
the
that's
choral
very
group
different.
has a ton of people.
Very different.
But what about the Delgani Quartet? Did they like what you chose, or how did that work?
I think that Jeff, am I right? They picked the pieces that they wanted
It's
to
been
do.
Yeah, it's been quite a few years now since we had the thing with the full quartet, but they definitely exercised some discretion
Good.
about. There were some pieces that the committee thought pretty highly of that they declined to play, if I remember correctly. I'd have to, like Shelley, I'd have to go back and look at records to give you the absolutely
No,
correct
it's okay.
story.
This is just
But I think
interesting.
I think, they are such a good group, and we have such respect for them. And this is another advantage, of course, of hiring a group which is an established performance group. When you're just bringing in a group of sort of festival format, and you bring in people from all over and throw them together in a group, it's a little harder to coordinate this aspect, I think, and it's a little harder to know what to make of the feedback you get back.
It's also not that professional to throw
Yeah, I
people
suppose.
together, right? Yeah.
Well, I'm speaking colloquially. I mean, you go out. We're always faced with. We have a certain repertoire. We have certain pieces that we'd like to do, and we go out and we talk to a number of performers. And are you interested in this? Are you interested in this? Would you
Oh,
like
I
to do
see.
this on this day if we pay you this much?
I see.
Occasionally we get. Well, unfortunately, that's not enough money for me to do this piece. And so
Oh,
then we just have to accept that, of course.
Of course, we do the opposite. We decide, for instance, we have another composers concert coming up, composers and friends, and then after that, we're having a horn quintet, a brass quintet.
Oh, wow.
So we
Cool.
all voted, in the board, and also if anybody else wanted to vote, they could. We kept, going down. Well, we had a trio, we had a string quartet, we had this, we had that. And this finally turned into one of the winner. And so now we've composed, whoever has wanted to, a piece for a brass quintet. And there's another group run by Davide Grotte. You probably know him. He runs a group.
Know the name.
With maybe three other composers that he does not vote in. He just runs the group, and they listen to all the pieces that have been submitted, and they make their decision, and they send the piece to the group. Now, as far as we've known so far, no one has ever said, look, I don't want to do that. So,
Well, that's very
good.
similar. That's
It's just
very
the
similar to
opposite.
what we.
It's the opposite.
That's very similar to what we did with the Delgani Quartet,
Oh, I see.
because they are an established group, and we love them. They're great.
Yeah, established groups are the best. Let's face it, they're professionals. And if we're intelligent and we have good music, we want professionals to play it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't beat an ensemble of people that have worked with each other maybe for years. I mean, there's, brass quintet, string quartet, woodwind quintet, it doesn't matter. If they
Right.
know each other, they enjoy working with each other, and they've got their act together, and that's really, doesn't always happen.
What's the group, David, that you have worked with that has the people that have been together the longest?
Well, I really couldn't give you an answer
Uh-huh.
to that because we've, for almost every concert that we've had to go and round up X number of
Oh,
performers
I see.
once the pieces have been selected.
I see.
And so it's different that way. It's harder that way.
Yeah,
In some
definitely.
respects, it's not as good doing it that way. But when we put a concert, even if a chamber concert has a theme to it, or it doesn't have a theme, we'll get a variety of instrumentation. Our budget will say we can only pay for 4 performers or 5 performers. We may suggest the specific instrumentation
I see.
that we want. If it's singer, what vocal range are we talking about including? So that's the way we've sort of been doing it.
I see.
Now we have done a lot of concerts that way. Jeff, maybe you know the numbers, but since we got going in 2008, we have easily given what, 500, 600 performances of pieces?
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, different. Yeah, we have.
Wow.
Well, it's hard because there's collaborations and stuff, but I'm sure we've done at least 50 or 60 between board-produced concerts and concerts that our members have put on with our help. I'm sure there's at least 60 or 70, and counting collaborations with like choral groups and that sort of thing, I'm sure we're over 100 in those 12, 13 years.
That's so impressive. So you don't need to change anything. That's really good.
Well, we're always trying to do it better, you know.
Try to
Of
do.
course.
We're always trying to get higher quality performances.
Do you mind if we go back to, now that we're kind of hitting the macrocosm, and go back a little bit to more what David, with those questions you kind of posed at the beginning, or I kind of have a
So
hypothetical
easy,
maybe.
Paul. Haven't we finished? Don't we have all the answers to that?
I'm on a mission here.
Okay, I guess so. All right.
I'm sorry. Do you mind? Can I toss out one more, like a hypothetical to everybody?
Okay.
And I know it's kind of weird describing a piece that doesn't exist. And
Make it profound.
okay,
Make it profound.
so let's say,
Well,
like,
you'll have to write it, Paul.
let's say there's a submission, and at least in my, like, one's perspective as a juror or whatever, that piece strikes you as something that has, like Shelley was saying, it grabs you on a emotional, spiritual kind of and musical level. Let's say
Visceral.
there's something, a visceral level there that you say, oh, there's something here, or that it's in, like, feels like an important thing to have on a concert at this particular time. Maybe it has some extra musical connotations or something, and even though it would obviously have craft, maybe you feel like it has some. If it has something lacking, it's maybe either in, maybe traditional elements of musical craft, or maybe even the score is a little sloppy or something like that. I mean, I guess I know this is sort of all vague, but, like, again, as a collective, I think it might behoove us to have like how much would we weight that sort of instinct of a piece that just feels like it's got something to say,
Well, you said,
as opposed to, like, weighting more heavily on our traditional views of craft to some extent. And it's kind of what you were talking about at the beginning, David, with
it's what you said,
skill
Paul,
versus, yeah,
about skill. A sloppy score is not a good sign.
no, it's not a good sign for
We
performance.
need,
Or a lot of
if you're going to have a performance at a certain level,
right.
it's important to know the key signature, the
Well, sure,
time
I know,
signature,
I know.
et cetera, et
Maybe I-
cetera, et cetera. So, but that's interesting because lots of times, I mean, like a piece that I wrote and I sent it to the people that I'd written it for, and they came back and they said measures, whatever, and whatever, we don't get the timing. And I had to go and work on it and get it correct before I, set the
Right,
piece in stone. And that's part of being a composer. But at that point, then that has to happen before you get the score.
Right. Okay. Well, but let's put that out of the equation and just say that maybe from my perspective, it feels like maybe a little on the pedestrian side, or maybe not so sophisticated, for lack of a better term. But there's still something there, kind of on an emotional,
Raw,
spiritual level. Yeah.
raw, perhaps.
Yeah.
It
That you
feels-
feel like you want to include it. I mean, how do we all feel like how would weight that in, in the
Well,
context?
why, I mean, as a group, you could always decide to write to the composer and say, for instance, feedback, I really enjoyed this piece. I think that the development could take place maybe a little later or sooner. Why don't you work on it a little bit more? If you want to talk about it, here's my phone number, and send it to us next time. I mean, a composer would appreciate that, I think, especially a new one or, beginning one.
I
If
don't
that's-
think we have ever done something like that before. Am I right, Jeff, Paul?
Well, that's a really interesting point, because back when I was trying various different formats, we did it on the website for a while. We did it on Google Forms for a while with the help of Amanda Rowe, some of you know, a website designer. And we started to do this thing where people who were submitting works could indicate somewhere on the form if they wanted to get detailed comments back from the selection committee.
Yes.
And that has kind of fallen by the wayside in the transition to New Music Engine. And I'm not,
Yeah.
it's New Music Engine, it's interesting. It's very, there's a bunch of stuff in there that makes it hard to fiddle things, They seem to be very concerned with the ethics of the whole process, and I really admire them for that. But that can sometimes make it cumbersome to share information around between judges and stuff as much as you might like to, and back to performers. So the short answer is that all that's kind of fallen by the wayside since we went to New Music Engine, but it might be possible to resurrect it if we thought about it.
Yeah.
Jeff,
We didn't
you
do
have
it
a
very much
memory?
in any case, but we did some.
Would we not, or Shelley, in the context you're talking about, you get a piece. Do you know who the composer is?
I am not on the selection committee, so I can't speak to that. But I do not think that our submissions are, no name. I think that everybody knows who is offering a piece to the group, for instance.
See, that kind of thing we can't do because
Why?
we've got now over 90 members. And I think in the beginning, a lot of us that formed the initial group, 7 or 8 of us that formed it, we would have our stuff done, etc. And after a certain point, as it kept getting bigger and bigger in terms of numbers, we realized that we just can't have mostly the same people getting their pieces represented again and again. And as the group again continued to expand in size, I think we thought that, look, we have to do an anonymous procedure, which is what we've been doing now for quite a few years. So we don't know the names of the composers when we are sent a composition.
That's
And-
so much more work for the composer.
Well,
It's
we
for
have-
these
we
particular
have-
concerts too. Right?
we have over 90 members. What are we supposed to do?
I think
Well,
a
we
great
also-
idea would be to break in half and have Cascadia 1 and Cascadia 2.
Well, we do
That's
other
what I think.
we do other concerts just to interject. Shelley, we have other concerts on the season that are curated with
Yes.
people's names that we know, and it's only the main concerts that are sort of open call for anonymous submissions. So we
Yeah.
do
Let me throw out a little tidbit for people to chew on. I don't know if this is, if we've found some kind of truth here. I personally am a great believer in an anonymous submission for a number of reasons, but here's something. Over the past several years, if you go back and look at at how many. So the past several years we've done anonymous submission, and the selection committee is always different from concert to concert to concert. Maybe one person is the same from one committee to the next. So we're always mixing it up. It's always anonymous. And it's really wonderful, actually, to see what comes out, because sometimes you get something in, somebody sends something in, well, who's that composer? They just joined. We don't know anything about them. Wow, this is an incredible piece. So that's a nice thing that comes out of that. But what I wanted to say, the point I wanted to make was that if you go back and look at the percentage of women composers that we have presented versus the percentage of women composers in the membership, they have tracked very closely. And we didn't have to, count up who's this and who's that. We just had anonymous submission and rotating selection committees, and it just happened automatically. And I think that's very interesting and very good.
It is. It's wonderful. Nevertheless, if you have 90 members and let's say 60 of them are active composers and the other, this is generous, and the other 30 are supporters, you're never going to be able to give everybody a chance. And I think this is, maybe something you want to think about, which is why I suggested having it, if you don't want to break into two groups, having something that, I don't know how to do it, but I would think about that, some way of, I don't know, more concerts or different, I don't know how to do it by age. I don't know.
I hear what you're saying.
Well, one way we could possibly think about doing it, and we have, I think, touched around this at some of our board meetings, is to go through the list, pick out people, and directly ask them to submit a piece. This would not be anonymous then. We would say, all right, let's take your projection of 60 active composers. We start with 15. And we know who they are. We have an email that goes directly to them. We want you to submit a piece given this instrumentation. Will you do that? And then go to another concert with another 15 members being directly asked to do that. That would be one way we could, in time, cover a lot more people. Might be one way to do it. We haven't done that. We have sort of talked around the periphery of doing something like that.
What about sending an email to your entire organization, asking them, saying, we would like to request that you submit a piece for whatever, baritone singers, whatever. And would you be interested in doing this? We are looking for other composers. You don't have to say anything besides that. If they're into composing, they're going to say, yes, I would. And if they're not,
Well, that's sort of the open score call. Is it that different than what we're already doing as an open score call? Or?
Have you ever done anything like set some limits in terms of, if your piece was presented on last year's concert, then you're not eligible for this year?
I was just going to make that point.
Do that.
We do
We
that.
have Jeff, maybe you should outline the rules that we use for our concerts.
In general, we do, so we do 2 board-produced concerts a year that are like just general composers showcase concerts that are the type that we're talking about. And, if you have a piece on one, you can't have a piece on the next one. You have to wait out one before you can get back in. And, it's interesting, we haven't thought about extending that to maybe sitting out 2 concerts as our members get larger, but we certainly have, you certainly can't be in 2 in a row.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't like that one.
Well, for this last concert, for the concert coming up in May, interestingly, I thought, we have, Jeff, how many pieces on it? We have 14?
Oh, we're going to have 14. It's a monster.
Wow.
But don't we have a lot of new pieces by new members? Not new members.
We do.
Necessarily, but people that have not been represented before.
We do. We have a lot of new ones, yeah.
You'd like to suggest maybe how many of the 14 that are people that have not had a piece represented?
Well, now you're going to make me
Yes.
look it up. Jeez.
Okay, look the damn thing up, and we'll have greater knowledge and therefore greater power. So,
Well, there you go. There you go. Let's
Okay.
let's
because
so I don't know if anybody how well people remember the announcement that went out about the pieces, but
got it.
Kirsten Volness has not had a piece on one of our concerts before. She's teaches at Reed. She's been there for a 3 years. Drew Swatosh has not had a piece. Noam Feingold just joined in order to submit a piece to this concert, and he's on. He's not been on there before.
He lives where, Jeff? Where did you say he
He's
lives?
in D.C. actually,
Washington,
of all things, Washington D.C. And it's been quite a while since we've had a piece by Ilana Cotton, who many of you know.
Yeah.
It's actually been quite a piece. It's been quite a while since Nick Yandel had a piece on a concert that was not an In Good Hands concert. So, and then down in the honorable mentions, Ryan Hare is a new member. Carolyn Quick is a new member. So, you know, in balancing that, there was a concert that was canceled about last May, and most of those composers are having their pieces from that concert done on this concert as well, and those tend to be composers who have higher representation over the years.
Okay.
Not entirely, but mostly.
But the people.
So we have a good balance.
Yeah.
Sorry.
They've done it through anonymous submissions, and that's maybe even better in that sense, because if these people on here, if we've got 80 whatever members and they have a piece on it, they got through the submission process with 5 judges doing it, then
Right.
you know, we don't directly tell them this, but they should feel good about that.
Yeah, the guy from D.C. wrote to thank me.
Oh, did he? Really?
Yeah, it was really sweet.
All right. So
Because he was concerned. He was concerned he would be basically discriminated against because of where he lives. And I assured him that we have one other East Coast composer who has actually had quite a few pieces done.
We didn't know where
in
he
our
lived.
concerts.
It was anonymous.
What's that, Paul?
We didn't know where he lived as a selection.
Right, of course you didn't.
I had no idea.
Name.
And that's what I explained to him, that you guys that nobody knows, unless he puts it on the score, nobody knows. So then he went up and he paid the full dues and he sent in his piece, and look, now he's on the program.
Okay, and it's not a political piece. No.
Well,
whatever that
maybe I don't know. It's called it's called A Prayer for Those Who Look Away. So you could interpret it somewhat politically.
Maybe so. I don't remember when I came across it. But Shelley, getting back to your point, the aspect that it's competitive this way, and the composers, when they submit pieces, know that if they're picked, okay, they don't know how many other people submitted pieces at all, but when the announcement comes up as to who is going to be performed, they probably feel pretty good about that.
Well, that's wonderful. Seems like you don't have any trouble or any problems, with the exception of the fact that you've got many composers.
Right.
So that, then you can just take it from there, and you can look at, well, how can we break them up? Or can we have more concerts, or can we have composers running the concerts, or whatever, so that more people are able to get their pieces heard.
Well, you mentioned composers running the concerts. We do that. We have what you call friends concerts.
Yeah.
And where 2 composers mostly will do the organization. They will know the pieces that they want to have represented. They will hire and pay for the performers, and Cascadia will pay for the venue and the publicity and a variety of things like that. So
I'd like to be on that.
we have had a number of years where, as long as a composer can do this, that is to say, pay for their performers, we'll have these friends concerts scheduled throughout the season. And we've done that a number of times as well.
there was another thing we did. We haven't done this in a long time. It was about 4 or 5 years ago, and we should perhaps think about doing it again. We went through the membership list and identified the people that had just, hardly had anything done, or maybe never had anything done, and we I can't remember exactly how we approached it now, but we weighted it. We weighted the evaluation in a way that would give them the best chance. And I can't even remember which concert that was now, but I remember going through that exercise.
Well, it has been a pleasure to hang out with all of you. I'm going to go now because I've got family upstairs who have been waiting for me, but nice to meet you all. And
thank you so much for
Great to have
joining us.
your input.
I remember hearing some of your
Very good.
music on concerts a number of years ago. So nice to meet
oh,
you.
very nice.
face to
Thank
face.
you. And
Thank you,
good
Shelley.
luck.
Please
Okay.
return sometime. Please
Bye.
return.
Bye, David.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Nice meeting you.
Okay.
We've also done those concerts where we've just kind of had it be like bring your own, like a BYOB, bring your own band kind of thing,
Right,
Where
right.
call for like first come first serve, no call for scores, kind of like an Astoria thing, like let us know by
Yeah.
X
That's
date
the
and
Astoria model.
Yeah.
bring, you play or you and a friend play or have a friend play and you set it up yourself, self-contained, and you just, I think that's kind of a nice side alternative to, something also lower overhead.
Well,
to
and it's also
organizations.
really great for the chapter because it gives visibility to this group called Cascadia Composers with very little investment by the board. So we love it, right? And it's recently, in fact, to the degree where at least before the pandemic hit, we were in a position of being able to give out $600 to the concerts that do that.
Oh, right.
Not a lot of money, but it's something.
Right. But I mean, like, if it can be done sort of as a independent curator, but maybe, I don't know. I don't want to get into all the details, but that is something down the road that might be a good match for this place in Cottage Grove that I know, because
Yeah.
anyway, there's a venue down there that's been, mentioned to me a few times that is interested in Cascadia doing something. It would have to be small scale, but it could be kind of a variety show. It'd be nice if it were an easy
How big is the
production.
venue, Paul?
It's small. It's very small.
Could
I
seat
don't know.
about what? At least 100?
I'd say just that max.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's like a little event center that Kim Still, the woman who has
Oh
occasionally
yeah, I remember Kim.
done poster design when we were in dire straits. She runs a place called The Cottage. You can look it up online in Cottage Grove, and does it's a rental facility for weddings and for whatever various functions. And
Any
she
idea
does
what the-
occasionally have music there. She has a sound system and a functional piano, but that's a consideration. There's not a great piano there.
Any idea what the acoustics are like?
I've been there before. It's nice, actually. It's very, very nice. It could be a nice acoustic environment that doesn't need amplification.
Mhm.
I have actually played there a little bit. So anyway, just planting the seed.
Jeff, I wanted to ask when we did the that concert, getting our newer members involved. Did we identify scores that this was a score from a member who had not had a previous performance with Nakusa?
Are you talking about the concert I was mentioning that we had like 4 or 5 years ago?
Yes. Did we?
Yeah, I believe we did. I believe
so that the committee knew that this composer, whoever he or she was, had never had a performance with us.
Right. It was anonymous. It was anonymous, but we had some way of indicating, the level of involvement they had. I wish I could remember better how we did it.
It's an interesting idea, though.
Could we send out a score call to our membership that says this particular concert on such and such a date will consist of members that have never been represented on a Cascadia concert. Send us in stuff with whatever your instrumentation is, assuming it's not for full orchestra, uh, chamber context, and we'll get to pick them out. We'll know who you are in advance, although we don't have to. But the one requirement would be that you have never had a piece performed on a concert of ours. Couldn't we do something? We have not done something like that, I think.
Oh, I thought there was another idea in there where we could just, if you just allow them to indicate on their submission that they have not had a piece performed before, that might be something. It's like if you're deciding between a couple pieces, we might put that in as an indicator, like, well, it doesn't mean you're going to get it performed because it's got to pass muster otherwise, but it would be more of a way of ensuring that we're trying to give some weight and opportunity to members who haven't been performed, and then it would naturally fill out.
But
We could actually do that. We could actually do that without them having to say, because you know what? I have all that data.
Well, that's true. Well, but then you would have to insert that data. I mean, I suppose,
Right,
Jeff, that
right.
that could be that could be done on New Music Engine as just another category, or to give
It could be.
instructions in the comments section, just to say that the composer could say, "I have never had a piece performed
Right,
by
right.
Cascadia."
And
We
you did
could
that a
we
little
could
bit
even
this time.
we could even have them enter a numerical field. How many works have you had done on a Cascadia? Counting everything, independent curators and everything in the last 3 years, for example. How many
Yeah.
pieces have you had done?
Yeah.
We could do that.
that might be nice. People might
Find a
appreciate that,
variety
even
of
if we
ways.
just put that out.
Yeah, good idea.
Of course.
One of the problems we run into is that we don't have an independent source of money to fund these concerts. We're trying for grants.
Yeah.
Less than every other
We
member.
need some mega $1 million donors. They are out there. We don't know how to get them. We don't really know them. But you've heard me say this before. When I was in the Cleveland Composers Guild, money was never an issue. It never came up. We had there was this lawyer in Cleveland, and we had about $60,000 a year to start with, and then that would be broken down. The first group that came and took a good chunk of that money was the Cleveland Composers Guild. Next was something like Cleveland Ballet. Another one was a chamber orchestra, etc. But the Cleveland Composers Guild was first, always. So we had, $16,000 to $20,000 right there. We didn't do any grant writing. We didn't do anything else. Well, all we did was
And that was
as composers, and it was competitive though, and some could be expensive because we did one, I remember more than one, where we hired members of the Cleveland Orchestra. Those people love to come out and do chamber music. Sometimes they get sick of doing all the orchestral repertoire, and chamber music, concept, player, one part to a player, they love doing that, and we'd hire them as a group. And boy, they were like, wow, really, really.
Could I ask
yeah.
a
I bet.
question?
I bet.
Yeah.
You're reminding me of something, and it's not quite exactly what you're saying now, because like independently wealthy would just allow us to do kind of whatever we want. But this question about money comes up sometimes, and I don't know. I thought that actually you put it an interesting way earlier tonight when you're like, well, if our goal was really just to make money on a concert, we would be doing a different thing than we're doing. We would be doing a
Right.
different kind of music. We would be gimmicks and tricks and other things. But it does, to me, get the question. This might be a different way to consider the topic for tonight too. Is like rather than how do we just a different way I wanted to phrase the question rather than how do we look at an individual piece. What do we consider for an individual concert to be successful? What makes to us? What do you think it makes it a successful Cascadia concert?
Oh,
Great
that's a tough question.
Great music, big audience, and a good review. Of course. I
True.
want it
Okay,
all.
so great. What is great? Well, it gets back to there, but I mean,
Yeah, well, that's subjective, of course.
how do we make a? I don't know. But then, how do we make a concert great? Is
Not
it?
that so much, but how do
Well,
we please an
Is it?
audience in the sense that they will keep coming back to our
I
concert?
think we're already doing a good job of putting on great concerts just from the musical point of view.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because the
absolutely.
quality of the performance has been really strong.
Yeah,
For the most
it
part,
varies. I
not
mean,
all the way. It does. It does. It does indeed. Yeah.
but
Um,
we certainly over the years we have identified some wonderful performers and wonderful groups, and they still like to work with us, so that's good.
yeah. I mean, if you take a group like Fear No Music, this isn't a really fair comparison because they are a performance organization, not a composer organization. But over many years, they have built up an audience that comes to them. Now, their venue now is completely the old church. So, even if you get a small audience, that place is going to look mostly filled. So that's good for them. But they have had people that come back again and again and again to their concerts. All right, that's the thing. Boy, wouldn't it be great for us as a composer group to build an audience that would come back again and again and again.
Well,
We
we
don't have a
talked a
Yeah,
little.
our
little-
problem is we keep changing things up on them, and just
Right.
when they think they know what kind of music we're going to throw at them, we throw something entirely different.
Right.
Well, that's okay
We
though.
talked about that with Amelia, just like a branding or something to hold people's hats on when they think of
Yeah,
Cascadia composers. We
right.
went we went through some of
It's
this. But
tough.
it is tough,
Not
especially 'cause
easy.
we have the large membership, and one of our missions is to be inclusive, and I think maybe that is what our mission is. That inclusivity.
Hmm.
But as far as what makes a successful concert, I mean, yeah, there's the audience, there's the performers, and there's that energy. To me, it all goes to like you can just tell when a concert has been successful by the energy in the room, the interaction between
I think so.
the music
Well, and
and the
and you,
the
Paul,
audience.
and you, Paul, certainly have been instrumental in more than one. I mean, Perceptions of Sound down there in Eugene, that was one of our best ones ever
Yeah.
in terms of audience,
Mhm.
audience involvement and interest. And you were a big part of that, making that happen.
But even some smaller, more intimate, concerts, I think, in some ways, to me, it doesn't matter as much as far as, I mean, we'd love to have larger audience members and continue to grow. But sometimes I feel like sometimes just being with a combination of programming and the right performers and pieces and an audience that's hungry for new music in a live setting, I don't know. You can still call it a very successful concert just by.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
I know we're talking philosophically here a little.
One thing we have talked about over the years and have never done is to do a fundraising concert.
Yeah, we haven't done one quite
And
this way, have we?
and many organizations do that.
Yeah.
And they they tailor a repertoire for that particular event that hopefully will draw a big audience and raise some money.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Greg. That's a good idea.
Didn't we try to do that with the Cuba project? Did we put on a
Yeah.
concert over at Sylvia and Victor's and had
Yeah.
the Cuban food and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
And
You did.
well,
Very few people showed up. But
Yeah.
I mean, we had fun, but wow.
being polite.
So obviously we have some stuff to learn
Yeah.
on how to do that.
But
But it's a great
think
idea.
it was the right idea. We just got to refine it a little bit.
Right.
The
Yeah.
thing with
Those of us
fundraising
who-
concerts is you
Those of
need
us who went
to.
to Cuba had a great time.
Oh, you're right.
But we couldn't quite
Concert wasn't much help.
what was down there to what we had here in that concert. Yeah.
What I'd say we really need is somebody to steer direct donations. That's something we've never had. That to get us towards that happy circumstance that you had back in Cleveland. But even to have somebody involved that would really go and I mean we need more direct donors, but somebody to like really kind of get that going, and that's not an easy.
Keep in mind that the ballet usually pays for the rest of their season by doing the Nutcracker every year. that opera
Yes.
companies do a lot by doing deflator mouse or something similar.
Right.
And I think if we maybe could identify some outstanding contemporary composers, irregardless of whether they're Nakusa members or not, and maybe feature that along with some other 20th century chestnuts now that might draw in some people.
I
Might
love
be
that
a-
idea. If we can get the performers to donate the time and the venue
Yeah.
to donate the space and the caterer to be nice too, that would be really, really fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely
With
some
what,
standards by
Yeah.
now.
Firebird.
So, at any
Music for 18 musicians. That's expensive to put on, though.
Mhm.
In C.
I
You
was
can do
going to
that
say
with any
NC
number of
is
musicians.
definitely, I've been wanting to do that.
Yeah.
We've never done that, have we, in part of a concert, have
No.
We should do
No.
something in C sharp, maybe. Get away from this
I've
C
just-
stuff.
I heard the very first time I heard NC, I was fortunate to hear a performance that, I mean, it was almost like it had a tonal structure to it, the way they followed the directions through, and it was just when there was a return to the actual C tonality, it was incredibly thrilling, and I thought, wow, I never knew it could be like that, and I don't know how many performances I've heard since then that never even came close. So it's tricky.
Another one that can bring people out is Satie's Vexation Variations.
No, I don't know about that one.
Yeah, no, I'll attest to that. No, I
Really?
was at a couple of schools where we did that, and it brought out a lot of people.
Really?
It wasn't done for fundraising. It was just people came out of curiosity because they didn't quite
suppose.
believe this piece existed. So-
I think I mentioned at previous board meetings a while back, like
Yeah.
a cage music circus kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we've already, Fear No Music did a
Yeah.
cage Centennial or whatnot,
Yeah,
chunk of years
His,
ago. but-
Histoire de Soldat brings out people.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, that's true.
It's very well known and liked, so sure.
Yeah.
We had a
Yeah.
donated performance of
So,
for
that-
13.
There's some
You
things
know,
some things we can explore.
If we were in good with one of these groups like Fear No Music, and they happen to do one of these kind of blockbuster pieces, I wonder how they would feel for a nominal extra contribution to repeating the concert for our benefit.
Yeah,
How do you mean, Jeff?
yeah.
Well, let's say they do the Rite of Spring for 4 pianos and percussion. That's popular. Let's say Fear No Music does the Rite of Spring for 4 pianos and percussion, and then we go to them. Well, wait a minute. I'm talking nonsense. Well, no, I'm not.
No, go with your thought. I think
So
you're on the
then
line.
we go to them and we say, well, what if you did them over in this location instead, so it doesn't overlap with where they did it the first time? You go over and you do it in this location, and we get 70% of the gate, or some large, like a fundraising proportion
Fundraiser for-
of the gate.
Right, and also,
If they liked us that well, that they would do that for us.
and would you also include some Cascadia works on it too, or just have it only be the
No, not
fundraiser?
necessarily.
Not necessarily, no. Huh?
But it would
Well,
have to
like
be
it.
some kind of a full concert, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
guess it's
yeah.
already a full
Time-wise.
concert. Yeah,
Lengthwise.
right.
Yeah, I guess
Or-
at the time I
or
remember
we
them doing it that. Go ahead.
We could include some older Nakusa composers that were outstanding composers in their day.
Oh, that's a good idea. I like that.
We
Who
might
have generally who have passed on now, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, like Henry Hadley, who was the founder of Nakusa.
Right. Right.
I mean, just as an example. And there are others with a little research we could, maybe do one of those works.
Sort of a historical type concert
Mhm.
way. Yeah.
This is kind of like a board retreat kind of. I don't know. discussions. It's kind of cool just to.
What I hear you saying,
haven't-
Paul, is you miss being on the board.
That's true. All things go full circle in life, don't they? Did you get to have one this summer? A little bit.
I think we did
Yeah.
have one at
Out
David's.
at David's place.
David, cool. Oh, that's
In
right.
St.
That's right.
Helens,
Yeah.
Greg won't let us come out anymore. I think we
We
trashed
We trashed the place last time.
No,
No, I'm kidding.
no,
We
it's,
drank too
it's,
much wine.
The
it's a
beauty
little
of
more,
photography
it's,
that we don't
it's
want
a
to
little
go
more than our situation can handle at the
I
moment.
know.
Maybe a group of Cascadia members could get together and we could sort of rewrite Ravel's Bolero and make that a big, exciting thing. People would come, they wouldn't know what necessarily, they all know the piece, of course.
It's true.
And we would do
Yeah.
something that was really, really different about it, but still
Right.
not destroy the piece.
What if you took it up a half step each time or something?
No, that's, hey,
But if you did that, that would ruin the punch of the ending if you were
It would
if you
ruin
kept
the
changing
piece
it.
anyways,
that would-
yeah.
that ending is just, the first time I heard that, I was just blown away. You hear that tune over and over and over again as it builds. And then he does this modulation to E major, and it's like an
Right.
explosion going off. And the stunning thing is when the whole orchestra moves there, the percussion sounds different. And it's not. They are still doing the same damn thing, the same timbre, etc., etc. But yet somehow the shift to E major by everybody else and then shifting back to C at the end is just so damn stunning. Yeah, we can't replicate that. No, not quite.
Well,
We shouldn't
That's
destroy
what
it either. But
I'm thinking more of a collage of random
we could have it.
melodies.
We could have a dancer. Actually, after all, it was a ballet originally, right?
it was.
Yeah.
It was
You
Yeah.
just change all the instrumentation.
name Rubinstein, somebody or other,
Yeah,
that ran
it
this.
was a ballet for Rubinstein.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And the audience, boy, I'd love to have seen that on a DVD. They went crazy as it built up. The repetition of that melody. I wondered, and that with that piece, that melody is so wonderful that I thought to myself, Ravel could not have come up with that. So I did some research, and guess what? He came up with the damn thing.
Hey, anybody who
Nowhere else. And I did some real good searching. And it's his. Ravel created the damn melody, and it's one of the most stunning melodies.
I'll give you a couple other examples, which I'm sure everybody knows. The opening of the second half of Daphnis and Coy, but even more, the slow movement of the G major piano concerto. It's probably one of the most wonderful melodies I know.
Yeah.
It's just he had the gift. He had the gift.
Yeah, he did. He did indeed. I think superior in that way to what Debussy did, but that would be my.
Right. Debussy was not so much of a melodist.
No, but he was.
And that's
wonderful
like
in other
saying,
ways.
well, there's Brahms with all those stunning melodies, and then you look back at Beethoven, and how many stunning melodies did he have? Well, you'd be missing the point.
Yeah.
Another idea. Mozart had his. I'm not going to think of the name of it, but it's a kind of a joking kind of thing. Many
The
famous
musical
composers-
joke.
Yeah,
The
the
musical
musical joke. I'm not going to think of some of the others, but we could do a program of those through the years,
Musical
you know,
jokes.
and hopefully maybe find American composer or two to throw in, so it's not all Europeans.
Frank Zappa.
And but that might be a very
Well-
attractive thing for some people to as a fundraiser.
Yeah, something
And
that
I'm
people
sure we
would
could
be
find the
curious.
musicians that would like to do it.
Something that would make people be curious about what they would go and hear. Yeah.
An easy type of fundraiser. I'm just thinking we got to get the performer to comp it. I don't. That's the primary funding source for each concert, right?
How many of
That's
us
what
are
costs
also
the
performers?
most money. What's
How many of us are also performers?
Oh, that would vary a
A lot of
lot.
us play some piano.
I mean, is it,
I don't think we know. Certainly not with this many members.
Good question.
we've got 80 composers out there. Certainly they're performing, some of them.
Yeah.
Quite a few.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's a really
Yeah,
good point.
maybe not professionally, but still can be very, very good.
Yeah.
You know,
goodbye, John.
I got to throw in an idea that we did during my undergrad. It was at Montana State, only in Billings, and it was a relatively small school, but we had a small new music ensemble, and we had a ball. I was at the piano all the time. We did John Cage, Credo, and Us, and we did it in the original form with the tin cans, with the scratchy record, with the old time radio, the whole bit. We did a thing by Nettie Simons called Puddin' Tame. And it's a one, if anyone ever has heard that, it's a web, like a math web, only it was a music web. In the center was a ball with F sharp. And we had, I think we had 4 instruments. And we did only things on, we had a conductor, we did only something on F sharp. And then we went off into another web, and it went to another E flat or whatever, and went up to that, and then stayed there and did things. It was a ball. And then we had a soprano who did a kind of a theatrical performance of the limerick, and a limerick. But then when we all got through back to F sharp, it's, what's my name? Puddin' and Tame. Ask me again, I'll tell you the same, or in her better voice. And it was, and we did several things like that. Nettie Simons was from New York, and our conductor knew her because he went to Eastman or something. But we did a lot of things like that. I tell you what, talk about a fundraiser, and we had standing room only. We had people standing in the halls. And they were and it was, we all just had a ball. I had some original pieces on. I was the only composer in the group, and then there was another guy that had a couple things that he was somebody biology major or something like that, and he wrote some things. There was an opening of an art gallery, and we wrote something for that, and it was we were walking through the halls going to our next class, and people would ask, other students would ask us for our autograph. It
Wow.
was so fun. It was
happening.
It was just absolutely fun. But I've seen, having worked at Interlochen, I've seen in C so many times that, it's crazy. But I've also seen that John Cage and Credo and Us done in every imaginable way. But when I did it, I was at the piano, and John Cage said, pull the piano lid down and do this, and drums, and underneath, and put your hand over the strings, and then there was a one whole session where it was just kind of a bluesy type of thing. There was supposed to be a dancer. We never did get a dancer, but that would have been fun. I don't think we would have had room on the stage for a dancer, but I don't know if it's something like that would work with our group.
Well, I think we're getting a lot of ideas that would focus on just a fundraiser type concert.
Yeah.
Maybe
Another idea too, it ties in with what Liz just said. You can do an April Fool's concert and have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Do it as a fundraiser.
Yeah.
That I learned about that when I was an Oberlin student. Every year they have an April Fool's concert. And I've been at a number of schools where we did that and used it as a fundraiser. And people eat that up too. You can do anything on those.
Yeah.
With the fundraiser, Greg, I was going to ask, do you ask specifically for a certain amount, or it's open? whatever somebody
Um,
donate.
I think we've done it both ways where I've been part of those where we've sold tickets or asked for donations. Um, I'm trying to think if we did one that involved food even, but that, that's just an added expense. But I think you can do an awful lot of interesting stuff
Yeah.
with an April Fool concert. And,
think if we're
and it doesn't also have to be musical. You can do short skits and, well, we've all watched Victor Borge, that you can,
He's the best. Yeah. Yeah.
If
And
we're
getting
talking
back, I just have to interject,
YouTube
getting back
live.
to the put and tame thing. One of our favorites was the flea, the fly, and the flu. And we had on that, we had, let's see, flute and piano and violin. And we went up the web to I can't remember, it was a B flat or something. And the three of us just played around with all these things. And there was somebody in an audience that went, and we would answer them. And it was just hilarious. And then the soprano would start to talk, and somebody would keep playing, and it just went on and on.
We could
hilarious.
ask people to leave their cell phones on and just react to what happens. When was the last time you were at a concert where they wanted you to leave your cell phones on?
Oh, yeah.
Well, okay. Maybe we can
Yeah.
do something about this. Yep. Yep. At any rate, we are past 9, so
Yeah.
I guess we had no problem with a discussion here, an open discussion. So a lot of stuff came up.
This was nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
And welcome again, Adrian. Thanks for coming.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's been
yes,
great. Greg, I have to ask, when were you at Oberlin?
61 through 64.
Ah. I was later.
What years were you, Adrian?
I have to stop and think. 80 to 84.
Oh, okay. I wondered if you had just because my brother Walter was there. I think just in the years just after you were there, Greg.
Yes, he was.
He was more like
Uh-huh.
mid to late 60s, mid 60s. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well,
Well,
folks,
Well,
shall we
thanks
close
for
it up
having-
in a moment? Going once?
Yes.
We've lost some members that had to
Yes,
leave.
I'm going to take off too.
yeah, I'm
See
gonna
y'all.
stop the recording.
It's been a
So
pleasure to meet you all.
Yeah.